This is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and in this video we're going to study the second lesson in Emmanuel Alvarez's Latin grammar. You can see this lesson here in the center of the screen, lesson number 2, and the title or subject of this lesson is Partes Orationis. Partes Orationis. And that translates into English as the parts of speech. The parts of speech. If you've studied English grammar, you're likely already familiar with the parts of speech. Here, we're going to learn about the parts of speech in Latin. If we look back to the previous lesson, to rule number 9, we learned that oratio, or speech, it can also be translated as sentence. Speech is made of words. Speech is made of words. And so if we think of speech as a whole, the words are the parts of the speech, the parts of which the speech is made. So the parts of speech refer to words. But there are thousands and thousands of words, and all different forms of words. If we wanted to learn how to speak well and to write well, we have to study the words of a language. But when we consider that there are thousands and thousands of words in a language, we have to ask, how can we possibly learn to speak and write rightly if there are thousands and thousands of words? What wise men have done through history is arrange all of the words into just 8 different classes. So there are 8 different kinds of words. And these are what we call the parts of speech. This is what we'll be studying beginning in lesson 2 here. The parts of speech in grammar refer to the 8 kinds of words that are used to make sentences or speech. We cannot possibly study the language by seeking to master all of the words of the language. That would be impossible. What we can do is study the 8 different kinds of words and learn about the characteristics of each of these different classes of words. And then, when we know about the parts of speech, when we know about each class of words, we'll know something about every word in that class. So by learning about one class of words, we'll understand the important qualities of hundreds or thousands of different words. And so this is the most efficient, the easiest way for us to study how to speak and write rightly, by learning the 8 parts of speech, or the 8 kinds of words. And that's what we're studying here in lesson 2. The first rule of lesson 2, which you can see right here, says Partes orationis sunt octo. Partes orationis sunt octo. Partes, the parts, orationis, of speech, sunt, are, octo, 8. The parts of speech are 8 in number, or there are 8 parts of speech. After that, we have a list of the names of the 8 parts of speech. The first part of speech is nomen, nomen. Now in Latin, the word nomen simply means name. But in English, we use the word noun to refer to this first part of speech. But it's important for us to understand that a noun is simply a name of something. The first part of speech is nomen, a noun. The second part of speech is pronomen. Pronomen. In English, that's pronoun. Pronoun. A pronoun is a word that is used in place of a noun. The word pro means in place of. So pronomen means in place of a noun. A pronoun is the second part of speech. The third part of speech is verbum. Verbum. Now in Latin, the word verbum simply means word. So the verbum is the most important or principal word in a sentence. In English, we refer to this as a verb. A verb. So the first three parts of speech so far are noun, pronoun, and verb. The fourth part of speech is participium. Participium. And in English, that's participle. Participle. The fourth part of speech is participle. It's called a participle because this part of speech participates in the characteristics of both nouns and verbs. And we'll understand what that means when we study participles later. But the name participle comes from the fact that this part of speech, these words, participate or share the characteristics of both nouns and verbs. These are the first four parts of speech: nomen, pronomen, verbum, and participium. Noun, pronoun, verb, and participle. The fifth of the parts of speech is prepositio. Prepositio. In English, that's a preposition. Preposition. You can see this name, prepositio, is built of two different words. Pre, which means before, and positio, which means place. Prepositio is a part of speech that's placed before a noun to express some relationship in a sentence. A prepositio, a word that is placed in front of a noun, a preposition. The sixth part of speech is adverbium. Adverbium. In English, this is an adverb. Adverb. You can see that this word begins with the Latin word ad, which means to or next to, and verbium, which is derived from verbum, which means verb. An adverbium is a word that's placed next to another word or a verb to express the manner in which something is done, how something is done. Adverbium is an adverb. The seventh of the 8 parts of speech is interjectio. Interjectio. In English, this is an interjection. Interjection. The word is made of the Latin word inter, which means between, and jectio, which means thrown or placed. Interjectio is a word thrown into speech in order to express an emotion. An interjection is a word that expresses emotion, like wow or hey. Those are interjections, the 7th of the 8 parts of speech. And lastly, the 8th part of speech is conjunctio. Conjunctio. In English, this is conjunction. Conjunction. A conjunction is a word that joins together. The word con means together. Junctio means joining. Conjunctio, a word that joins together other parts of speech. So these are the 8 parts of speech: nomen, pronomen, verbum, participium, prepositio, adverbium, interjectio, and conjunctio. In English, that's noun, pronoun, verb, participle, preposition, adverb, interjection, and conjunction. These are the 8 parts of speech. Now, this forms for us a table of contents for the rest of Latin Grammar 1. In Latin Grammar 1, we study etymology. Etymology, you can see that word written at the top of the page. Etymology, that's the subject of Latin Grammar 1. Etymology is the study of the parts of speech. And in this course, for the rest of this first part of this book, we're going to go one by one studying the characteristics and forms of each of the 8 parts of speech. So this rule here in Lesson 2 is sort of a table of contents of what we're going to study for the rest of this course, the 8 parts of speech. In the second rule, we learn that these 8 parts of speech divide into 2 different groups. The 8 parts of speech divide into 2 different groups. So all of the words in the Latin language can be divided into 2 different groups. We read here in rule number 2, harum quatuor nomen, pronomen, verbum, participium declinantur. Harum means of these 8 parts of speech in Rule 1. Quatuor means 4. So of these 8 parts of speech, 4. And now we're given the names of the 4. Nomen, pronomen, verbum, and participium declinantur. Declinantur means are declined. That means that they have different forms. So nouns have different forms. So not only is there a noun, a single word, but that word in Latin has a number of different forms. Nouns are declined. They go through different forms. Pronouns also are declined. They have different forms. Verbum, a verb, is also declined. They have different forms, and a participle is also declined. It has different forms in Latin. Harum quatuor, of these 8 parts of speech, quatuor, 4. The noun, the pronoun, the verb, and the participle are declined. And then in the second half of rule number 8, we read, rule number 2, we read prepositio, adverbium, interjectio, conjunctio, declinationis sunt expertes. The preposition, adverb, interjection, and conjunction, declinationis, of declension, sunt, are, expertes, accepted or free from. So these last 4 parts of speech, preposition, adverb, interjection, and conjunction, are free of declension. They do not have different forms. So when we learn a preposition, we'll learn one word, and that's the only form that that word exists in. It's a simple vocabulary item with a meaning. The same is true for adverbs, interjections, and conjunctions. But the first 4 parts of speech, not only will we learn some basic or regular form of the word and its meaning, but we'll also have to study and learn a number of different forms for those words because they are declined. The first 4 parts of speech are declined, and the second 4 parts of speech are not declined. That's rule number 2 here in Lesson 2. So that brings us to the end of Lesson 2 in Alvarez's Latin grammar. We've walked through these 2 important rules, and we've seen that this lesson serves as a table of contents for everything that we're about to study in Latin Grammar 1. It's time now for you to study this lesson for mastery and complete the lesson assessment. Once you do that, we'll continue our study in Latin grammar. God bless your studies.